Welcome to the Maria Liberati show, where food meets art, travel, and life. So what does food mean to you? My guest this week is author, culture expert Urmi Hossain, and she actually lived in Italy also for quite some time, and she's gonna share with us some tips as well as share her story with us. And I will be sharing my recipe for these little bite-sized Italian cookies. They're really popular. Whenever I write about them on my blog, I get so many hits on my blog. They're called Amaretti, and I will be giving a recipe for Amaretti, but that recipe is part of a excerpt from my latest book, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking, Diaries, Seasons. And it's an excerpt from a month in October that I was in Italy, and the excerpt is called Dolce Amaretti, and it will include a recipe for Amaretti, so stay with me. And as promised, here's the excerpt from A Month in October, Dolce Amaretti, from my latest book, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking, Diaries, Seasons. And this excerpt also contains a recipe for Amaretti. I'll have the recipe on my blog, but you can get your pencils out if you'd like to write the recipe down. Before I give this excerpt, I just wanted to remind everyone that I will be appearing at the Valley Forge Casino and Resort on October 21st and 22nd at the Taste Philadelphia Festival of Food, Wine, and Spirits, and I will be appearing with some other celebrity chefs, along with, wow, I'm really excited, Kurt Russell. So please join us. I'll be sampling recipes from my book, and probably be cooking on stage also, and be doing a book signing. And I will also be at the Lancaster Festival of Food, Wine, and Spirits at the Lancaster Convention Center on November 11th and 12th. I'll be joining a lot of other celebrity chefs. There's always great food, great wine, great spirits, and lots of fun at these events. So please join us. You can get tickets online. And if you have any questions about either event, you can email me at info@marialiberati.com. Dolce Amaretti. What is it about cookies, or dolce in Italian, that have even the harshest food critics saying, whether these sinfully sweet desserts are prepared warm and gooey or tastily crunchy? I've never met a cookie that even Santa Claus didn't like. Derived from the Dutch word cookie, that's K-O-E-K-I-E, meaning little cake. In most countries, cookies are referred to as biscuits. Dating back as far as the 7th century, these perfectly sized treats journeyed globally into the hearts of society by the 14th century, quickly becoming a scrumptious crowd pleaser among travelers, street vendors, and social classes alike. By the 1600s, cookies marched straight into the ovens of the Americas, proving a multitude of recipes were anything but cookie cutter. The delicious aromas springs a nostalgic vision of generations hovering over antique appliances, waistlines cinched in funky aprons, as family traditions and bake-offs leave us wanting more. Amaretti, which are a personal favorite of mine, are a traditional Italian cookie biscuit crafted to pillowy white hints of lemon, vanilla, and confectioner's icing. Perfect for tea parties. I located a family recipe and worked on it today. Unsurprisingly, they tasted exactly how I remembered. Family recipes have those special ingredients, love memories, and tradition. These are bite-sized Angenetti, and they yield approximately 40 small cookies. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon of lemon zest, 6 tablespoons of butter, half a cup of skim milk, half a cup of regular sugar or a sugar substitute, 3 whole eggs or 3/4 cup of egg beaters, 3½ cups of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a half a teaspoon of baking soda. For the icing, use a teaspoon of vanilla extract, a tablespoon of fresh squeezed lemon juice, 1 cup of confectioner's sugar or a confectioner's sugar substitute, 1 tablespoon of water. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees while lining a large cookie sheet with parchment paper or aluminum foil. In a large mixing bowl, beat the vanilla, lemon zest, margarine, milk, and sugar with electric mixer on the medium setting until the texture is well blended. And I meant butter, not margarine. So that's in the large mixing bowl, beat vanilla, lemon zest, butter, milk, and sugar with the electric mixer on medium setting until the texture is well blended. Add eggs one at a time, beating each addition, and then continue to beat the mixture for 1 minute. On low speed, blend in the flour 1 cup at a time, the baking powder and baking soda until the consistency becomes firm and it becomes a sticky dough. If needed, have a wooden spoon available for mixing. Dust hands lightly with additional flour, rolling the dough into bite-sized balls. Place approximately 20 onto a prepared cookie sheet, spacing 2 inches apart. Bake 10 to 12 minutes or until light golden brown. For the icing, while the first batch is baking, combine the vanilla, lemon juice, sugar, and water into a small mixing bowl, whisking the ingredients until the mixture is completely blended. Remove the cookies from the oven, placing a sheet of wax or parchment paper beneath a wire rack. Using a small pastry brush, frost the tops of each cookie with the icing. Sprinkle with additional confectioner's sugar and transfer to a rack for cooling. Then begin the second batch. And as always, for those that need to eat gluten-free, you can substitute gluten-free flours for the regular flour in this recipe. You can also substitute sugar substitutes for any of the sugars in this recipe. Enjoy! My special guest today is Urmi Hossain, and she is the author. She's got a very interesting story, but she's also the author of a book called Discovering Your True Identity. And she's also employed full-time in the financial services industry, but she has a really interesting story to tell with the book that she just wrote. It was just released about 2 months ago, Discovering Your True Identity. Urmi, thanks so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you. How are you?
Good. So, and by the way, I guess I'll just mention as a side note that she was born in Italy and lived in Italy for a while. But I guess I wanted to ask you first, how did you decide to do this book, Discovering Your True Identity?
So I actually decided to write this book. Well, it was not in my plan, at least not for this year. I always had a plan of writing a book, but I never knew what I wanted to talk about. And then I was inspired by another girl who wrote something similar, like the one that I have written. So I read her book and I felt very much inspired. So I reached her out and I said, okay, how did you publish your book? How did you write your book? And she told me that her main reasoning for writing the book was just to cope with the difficulty that she was going through in her life. And then she was like, oh, I just self-published it. And she said there is a lot of available resources online. So then I was like, you know what? I think I want to do something like that too, where I just want to express all my emotions and my frustrations. And then what happened is I read this book, which says like how to write a book in 30 days. So I read that and then I was like, okay, I'm going to do the same thing too. So I read that book, and then right after, like literally in June, I started to write off my book, and I was just motivated. I just had this drive, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna write it, and I'm just
Yes.
gonna go ahead and just write down all the thoughts that I have in my mind, and then I'm gonna work on it after. So I had an initial draft ready.
Uh-huh.
And then after doing the initial draft, I was like, okay, this is how I want to divide each chapter. And this is what I want people to know. So in this book, I do talk about a little bit my experience being a third culture kid, because I was born and raised in Italy, and my parents are from Bangladesh. So it was a little bit of a struggle for me to like fit into like the Italian world, but also in the Bengali world. So sometimes I never felt like I was good enough for either one of the world. And I
Uh-huh.
do talk about a little bit of episodes of me like going to school to Italy, or
Uh-huh.
having Italian friends,
Yes.
or things like that. So it was just something that came up like literally this year, but it wasn't in my plan. Like it was eventually my plan to write a book, but not this year. So I just went with it this year.
So what was your experience like? I know you were born in Italy. Were, was it easy to make friends? Like, were people accepting of you because you're not Italian? I mean, you're Italian because you're born there, but your family is from Bangladesh. So certainly you have that culture, that's your family's culture. So were people accepting of you in Italy? Was it easy to make friends?
Yeah, it was very easy actually. Like for me, everything was super easy. I know that even for my Italian friends was something new as well, because the schools I attended, they didn't have a lot of immigrant kids. So even for them to see someone who's like technically like different, like at
Right.
least aesthetically different, was something new to them. But it was very easy for me to integrate, and I never felt like I was less of anything. And so I integrated really, really well. And I would say that my closest friends are actually Italian, because that's where I felt like I could be myself. But then I
Uh-huh.
knew that there was a little bit of clash when I would go home, because I had so much of that open-minded mentality going on.
Yes.
So when I would go back home, there was a little bit of like, I felt like I was clashing a little bit, because,
Uh-huh.
it's a very strict culture, the Bengali culture, and it's
Okay.
very conservative. So I always felt like it
Oh,
was clashing in a way. Yeah.
yes, yes. How about dressing? Like, is there, since you're mentioning conservative, and I know Italy is not extremely conservative when it comes to dressing. So how is that? Where, I'm sure your parents had some strict rules, and in Italy it's a lot more open as far as the way you dress.
Yeah, so my parents they were okay with how I was dressing, but of course, like, they always wanted me to be covered.
Uh-huh.
And often in times they would also tell me to wear like traditional clothes when I would go out and stuff like that.
Right.
So I remember when I would do that, I would have people staring at me, because as I mentioned before, this was new to them. So they didn't know what kind of clothes we wear.
Oh, yes.
So when I would go out, let's say for like things like grocery and stuff like that, and I would wear those type of clothes, I always felt like people were like staring at me.
Uh-huh.
And when I would go to school, I would just wear normal clothes, shirts, t-shirt and stuff like that. But of
Right.
course, there was also that type of clash as well, because I did have sometimes my Italian friends ask me, okay, why do I not see you ever wearing like mini skirts or
Uh-huh.
showing off your legs? And I would always tell them it's because it's predated from the actual culture.
Right, right, exactly. Yes, I know in Italy they always want you to wear mini skirts
Yeah.
or bikini, and they're more open as far as dressing, but I would assume that was a stricter, yet your culture is definitely stricter than that. But that's really nice. So you were able to integrate. How about like the foods and things? Were you able to find foods that, well, you were born in Italy, so you're going to be, probably used to eating there, but I'm assuming your family probably made their typical food. So were you able to adjust with the way the Italians eat and eating there and getting your own foods there? Were you able to find things?
Yeah, so at home, my parents would make a lot of Bengali food because that's what they eat. So they like we
Exactly.
use a lot of spices and a lot of spicy food. So I was not used to it, to be
Yeah.
honest. And
Uh-huh.
every time I would come back from school, I would tell my mom, no, I want to eat pasta. So I'm a big pasta eater. I love
Uh-huh.
pasta.
Uh-huh.
And I would every time I would see rice, I would always make complaints and be like, no, I want to eat pasta. But this is the thing, my parents, even though they like to eat Bengali food, rice, chicken curry, and stuff like that, they still also integrated the Italian food at home. So they would make like lasagna, they would make, pasta and stuff like
Right.
that.
Oh,
And
that's
I
great.
think that's where it started my love for pasta because they actually introduced me to pasta. And
Uh-huh.
then in Italy, when you go to school, basically, I think the primary school, because it's like 8:30 to 5 o'clock, you have this 2 hours lunch break where you have to eat at school.
Yes.
It's a program like offered by the schools where you have to eat. And there I would eat
Yes.
like a lot of Italian food. And I think that's how my love for Italian food just grew and grew. And
Yes.
so I love, like, if you ever ask me which cuisine do you like, I'm always gonna tell you I love Italian food because I just find a lot of satisfaction and content when I eat Italian food.
And
And
I'm told that the school food is pretty good also, right?
it's super good. It's super good.
Yes.
Yeah.
What I was told. Yes, many times. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So that's how, and there are ways to incorporate, to kind of blend cultures in foods too. Like you might be able to make some pasta dishes with some of the spices you're used to. So
Yes.
I know I've done that with different, not traditional Italian spices, but spices that are actually have health benefits to put them in, different dishes that are not traditional spices. So there are ways to incorporate that and kind of do a nice blend of the culture. So that's great. So you were able then to assimilate into the culture there in Italy, eating wise and going to school, you said, making friends. And
Yes.
so is there a community? I know different countries and even Italy, I know there are different areas where they have like a community of people from different areas. Were you living in an area that might have been a community of people from Bengal, people that were from Bengali or
Um, Not exactly. So I would say that everyone that was basically people that were from Bangladesh, they were pretty much scattered all over Italy. And
uh-huh,
even within city, we didn't have an actual area they would say, okay, this is just for this kind of people. We were all pretty much like spread all over the city. But
right?
when we would gather together, we would always go to the specific place, like to a specific like piazza. That's how we call it,
Yes, the piazza. Mhm.
piazza.
Yes,
And we did have like also big communities back when I was living there. So we did have a lot of people from Bangladesh. We had
yes,
people from other communities as well. But now
yes.
a lot of people have moved out from Italy. Like they all went to other countries. They went to UK. They went to other places. But back in the days, we did have a big communities, and we were pretty much spread all over Italy, everywhere, basically.
So Bangladesh is the country you're from, and I said Bengali, but is Bengali the culture? Tell me what the difference is. So Bangladesh is the place that your family's from, and Bengali
Is the
is
people are the people.
is the people from
Yeah.
Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my mistake. But yes, just so my listeners know too. So well, that was nice that you didn't just stick to a community of people from Bangladesh because you're living in Italy, so you want to try and assimilate, also into the culture there as well. But I do remember, I know even in Rome there were different pockets in different neighborhoods of people from different countries, and there would be stores that sold the types of products,
Yeah.
foods and all that that they were accustomed to also.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's nice. Well, that's a really nice experience. So are you still living in Italy?
No, I moved to Canada. I've been living in
Oh,
Canada
okay.
for
So
some
you're in
time.
Canada.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Okay, okay. So,
Yeah.
but that's a nice experience that at least you got to live there and experience that also. And so how is it living in Canada now? Same thing, like you're able to assimilate and all of that?
Yeah, Canada, it's more like a melting pot
Uh-huh.
because in Italy we didn't like we do have immigrants, but we don't have that many. Like you
Right.
see much more Italian people, but in
Yes.
Canada, I feel like you see a little bit of everything, and it's not like a small proportion of this, a small proportion of that. You see a little bit of everything in an equal proportion, and so I feel like it's much easier to assimilate in Canada, and it's much easier to find people that are from mixed backgrounds. It's not just one background. You have people with like
Yes.
2 or 3 backgrounds. And I think that's
Yes.
what makes Canada so interesting. And I have met a lot of Italian people in
In
Canada, which is
Canada,
why I
yes.
think I like it, because I feel like you feel less at home. And we do have a lot of Italian stores that
Yes.
import food from Italy, so you
Yes.
you don't really feel like you're missing home, besides of course the
Yes.
city and stuff like that. But
Yes.
we do have a very big community of Italian people in Canada for sure.
Definitely. Yes, I know they do. Yes, I've even had some products sold there that in specific pockets of, there's large Italian communities. That's great. That's great. Well, Army, so tell people where they can find your book, Discovering Your True Identity. That's the title, right?
It's called Discovering Your Identity,
Your
a,
identity.
a rebirth from interracial struggle.
Uh-huh.
So my book is available on Amazon, and anyone can purchase it.
Yeah.
I also have a blog, so people can
Yes.
subscribe to my blog. It's called myways.ca. I also have a YouTube channel. It's my full name, Urmi Hossain, and people can also connect with me on LinkedIn. They just have to type my name, Urmi Hossain.
Okay, and I'll try and have that on the website for this show, the marialiberatishow.com, so people can follow you also. That's great. Well, thank you for being on, and much success with the book.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Maria Liberati Show. And as always, thanks to my producer, Britton Roselle, and my special guest this week, author and culture expert, Urmi Hossain. And you can find me, as mentioned, you can find me at Taste Philadelphia, a festival of food, wine, and spirits at the Valley Forge Convention Center on October 21st and 22nd. I'll be there with Kurt Russell and a lot of other celebrity chefs. Yes, that's right. Kurt Russell will be joining us this year. And let's see, in Lancaster, I will be at the Festival of Food, Wine, and Spirits, November 11th and 12th. And you can get tickets online. That's Taste Philadelphia on October 21st and 22nd, and the Lancaster Festival of Food, Wine, and Spirits on November 11th and 12th. Lots of great food, lots of great chefs. I'll be there doing sampling from my latest book and a book signing, and I'll probably be on stage cooking also, so please join me. And you can find me at marialiberati.com. You can find my book series, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking, and the book that I read from today, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking, Diaries, Seasons, at artoflivingprimamedia.com, at marialiberati.com, on Amazon and Kindle, and really anywhere books are sold. You can also find me on Instagram at Maria Liberati, on Facebook at Chef Maria Liberati, on Twitter at Maria Liberati, on Pinterest at Maria Liberati, on LinkedIn at M Liberati, and let's see, you can also find me on my Roku channel, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking by Maria Liberati, the Maria Liberati channel on YouTube. Until next time, peace, love, and pasta.